Alina, this book is something else. She's saying, she's saying that the things that, that stand out to you, the things that you want to repeat and all of these things into your life. Listen, everything
stands out.
So I break it down into portions that I can manage.
This really was transformative.
Good evening, Achievers. So happy to have you joining into the live discussion once again this evening. Welcome to Book Club Conversation Series 6, a presentation put forward by the collaboration between Launchpad Consultancy and Vision Work Solutions. And in this series, entrepreneurs and professionals are reading the book The Uncommon Achiever, written by Mike Murdock. My name is Alina Lewis. I'm an author, a business coach, and an education consultant. And joining me this evening is Roel Rollocks of Vision Work Solutions and Michelle Ellis of Matty's Resort in Mayarug. Hi, guys. How are you all keeping?
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm really excited to have you here with me this evening as we talk about Mike Murdock's 13th chapter entitled Make the Necessary Adjustments Continually. And in this chapter, he starts off by talking and saying that appearance matters. And the question I wanted to ask you is that as you think that appearance matters and you translate this into your professional and your personal roles, how does this resonate for you? How do you incorporate the whole idea that appearance matters? What's the big oops of it for you? Open dialogue, open question.
Well, I guess I can jump in. I see Michelle like she was raring to go.
No. You go ahead, Mr. Rollocks. By all means, you go ahead.
This question about appearance is a very, very intriguing one, It's something that we know intuitively. All of us, every day we go about making decisions. And pretty often, we're making those decisions based upon what we see, and we're not always aware of it. In fact, I know there's a stat somewhere circulating that when we think about nonverbals, the things that we see, the gestures, all those other things, apart from what people say, they account for something between 70 and 90-something% of communication. So when you consider that, you know that it's something that we do all the time, things that move our emotions based upon what we see, so that I have come to recognize it as very, very valuable as a life principle, not just only in business, not only in career, you understand, but even in relationship, I could recall, periods of courtship and, having a girlfriend and, those kind of things. And, as a man, you want to impress. And those things do really make a difference because we are making judgments based upon what we see, In terms of business, I started off, I shouldn't say started. My second career, for want of a better word, was in the area of sales. And I saw very, very dramatically what happens when you appear the part, as someone who some people can trust. If you're talking about finance and talking about insurance, the trust factor is pretty high. So if you yourself look like you need help, it certainly impacts upon, your ability to succeed in that particular profession. In fact, I've had on occasion clients come out of a meeting and look to see where you park because they want to see what you're driving. Who is this person, coming to tell me about what I should do with my money? I remember dealing with one particular client. And they asked me certain questions about what they were seeing. And as far as they're concerned, I didn't look like the person who could help them. You understand? So I've had to come face to face with it, whether on a personal level or whether on a business level. And certainly it has impacted, impacted me in many different ways. Some other aspects of it, even as a parent or having to lead groups, sometimes you have to also play the part in that way too. As a leader, I've found it's difficult when you yourself appear confused, like you don't know what you're about, you're uncertain. That type of appearance does not instill confidence in the people that you lead. So even from that perspective, I've seen how the idea of appearance is very valuable. So those have been, some examples I can share that I can recall at the moment.
Thank you, Roel. Michelle, what about you? As you consider the whole notion that appearance matters, how does this translate into your personal and professional life?
Well, thanks for having me. Let me just say, with respect to the whole question of appearance in my professional life, it is a 90 to 100% factor, because when guests come onto the premises, right, they are concerned with how the layout, the external, the facilities. They want to know if it's clean inside, if the beds are well made up, and so on. And I have found that the best way to my client's heart is to make sure that I deliver 100% on cleanliness, on level of, they must be able to feel the comfort by just looking, right? So the type of furnishings, the color, when the smell, everything that would engender that sense of, that we are well thought of, and therefore we're well catered for, right? That is a big selling point. What I've also noticed is that when we're having interaction, even if the guests don't see me personally, we're talking via WhatsApp, um, voice or text, right? How I present the message and the information that I convey, how I break it down, right? That is also very important. Mr. Rollox talked about selling, sales, right? We're constantly selling. So I make sure that every pillow on the bed is well placed, right? I make sure that the combination of the sheets and the spreads, color coordination is there, so that when people come in, it's very appealing. When I'm texting, my kids say, "Mommy, you put a full stop or you put a exclamation, people may think that you're angry." So I've had to relook all of that. I spell my words out carefully, point form, so that people can flow and understand what the message is. My tone of voice when I answer the phone, because even though we're not able to see each other, that is also my appearance, you see. Um, and then the pictures that I choose to send, because people are concerned, with how the space looks and what they think they're expecting to get when they come there. So for 100%, yes, I'm certain
Hmm.
that appearance is very important, particularly in my line of business, right? In terms of my personal life, I realize that people, they want to know who you are, and the authenticity is important, right? For um, the person that Michelle is. So I try to stay not, being overly done, right? This is how I have been for the last, umpteen years. People know me this way, and I try to be always modest, um, not just in appearance, but in speech and in everything. So it's a package, really. That's how I see appearance being important.
Yes, yes. Alina, can I add?
Yes, of
Yeah, can
course.
I add? You see, it's for me, it's fundamentally an issue of trust. It's a trust issue, you know, and we interplay with this all the time. If you go to a bank, just the way the bank is set up, you understand, there's certain questions you're not going to ask, because you see certain types of things in certain order. If you go to I don't probably want to use this example. Maybe it's a small credit union or some small, shop. And when you see a certain way, it gives a certain level of, I should say, a lack of confidence in that way. So it really is important. And I can recall sometimes, I don't know if any of you can recall going into someone's vehicle that is spick and span, or going into someone's home. Earlier, Michelle was talking about Marty's Inn and her facility. Once you go into a particular place that is well ordered and well kept, it orders how you behave. All of a sudden, you're asking questions like, should I keep my shoes on? Can I leave it here? When you go into someone's vehicle that is spick and span, you ask the same questions. Unfortunately, when we go into vehicles that are not well kept or places that are not well kept, we often don't ask those questions. So just a thought.
Yeah, definitely, Rod. Thank you so much for sharing that. Even as Michelle was chatting as well, my mind went back to 2010 when I began working in education from an entrepreneurial point of view. I had been teaching for many, many years before, but I started my first business in 2010. And I remember my first clients were people who had to convince me to accept them as clients. And the question I asked at the time is, why did you come to me to ask me to do this? Why were you so insistent? Because I kept saying, no, that's not, that's not what I want to focus on right now. And they kept saying, no, you have to take my daughter. You have to take my daughter. And I said, why? Why was this so important to you? How did you know this was going to work out the way? Because, education is an investment. And when you start talking about SCA level students, we get even more intense about it, because we want that first choice placement. And after the child finished and she got her first choice and she went to St. Joseph Convent and everybody so happy, I asked the parent, how did you know I could deliver? Because I just started my business. I didn't have a track record as yet. And the family member said, Alina, we look at everything else you do, and everything else you do to the best. You do everything else with excellence. So we knew if you took our child, you would guide her education with the same level of excellence. And my mind went back to that story, even as Michelle talked about not just how you dress, but how you organize, how you put things in place, how you approach situations. Because really, all of these put together contributes and supports the whole idea of appearance. And even to quote, we have one of our comments coming in where Simone shares with us that body language and nonverbal clues also have an impact on a person's appearance and influences the response you receive from others. And that is quite true. We want to be mindful of this when we think of appearance, because it's not just about how you dress, how you comb your hair, the color of the clothes that you wear, but you want to think about all of the elements that really go into creating the experience. It's a relative, a professional, a colleague, whatever, that all of the elements that go into contributing to the experience that they're able to have with us. And even as we think about that, Mike Murdock also said, make necessary adjustments continually. That actually is the name of the chapter. And given all that we have experienced during COVID, I wanted to ask you all, what adjustments have you had to make, and probably make again and again, to be able to survive and thrive during this COVID pandemic here in the Caribbean? Can you all share a bit about that?
Well, let me jump in on this one. Just say that, yes, the adjustments that I've had to make was, one, I had to get a little more computer savvy. Two, I had to document procedures and protocols for guests coming to the facility, right? How I'm able to interact with them and find ways of, creating the space so that it is, or redesigning the space so that there's enough social distancing, so that we're able to sanitize and yet deliver a quality product. And it was funny because I hadn't realized that the very model that we use was actually helping, right, and preparing us for this very moment in history, right? So guests come in and everything is no contact. They don't necessarily have to see us on the premises. Their space is ready, it's sanitized. right? One time, and of course, we never allowed viewings, you see. So there was one time this guest, a prospective guest, came and they said, "But we need to see the place before we make a decision." And I said, "Well, what I can do for you is I will have you walk around the premises and I will leave the blinds open so that you can view and see what is there." And it was so funny because she was able to do that and she made a decision. And I realized at that very moment that having accurate, truthful pictures was very important to promote the business during this particular time. Reassuring persons of what protocols we follow, even to the extent of documenting certification and training, right, that we would have had to do so that people felt safe, right, and know that we stand by whatever we have committed, right, in terms of this particular period. I've also had during this time to do a lot of introspection, in terms of where I'm going and whether it is I I am really ready for this new change. So internally, it sent me into my head thinking. It had me documenting procedures and protocols, and also putting things in place to continue to build my clients' confidence in the product that we offer. Right. So that was me in a nutshell. Nothing major because, as I said, we had already been putting things in place and moving in this direction in any event. So everything just lined up for us.
As you mentioned that, Michelle, one of the big takeaways I pulled from what you said is the importance of standards, procedures, and protocols. That when COVID hit, you were not in shambles because you had a system. You had a way of doing things that was tried and tested, and it worked well for you. And I really want to use that note to people. We don't have to wait for something to break and then fix it. We don't have to wait for an emergency to decide we need to make an adjustment. But if it is that we have standards, we were able to sit and plan and forecast and even put in place so many of the principles that Mike Murdock really encourages us to put in place for this book. We'll find that when emergencies do happen, when things do, challenges do come to us, we're able to handle it, and we're able to handle it just with all the confidence in the world because we're ready. We're ready and we're not just doing the bare minimal. So I really want to encourage people. Always remember it's important to not do the bare minimal. But when you think about what is the representation of the best that you can be? What is the representation of the best case scenario that your business could have? Putting those things in place, even though there's nothing hanging over your head to say you must, will always come back to benefit you. Because I remember chatting with Roland, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were checking in with each other. And I was happy to tell him that pandemic didn't stop the classes at SRC Private, where I function as principal. The COVID pandemic didn't stop us because prior to that, Roll and I had a conversation in 2019, actually, where we are talking about the importance of getting the tech in place, getting your online systems in place. So when COVID hit, we already had a fully functional online system already in place. And within a day, students were onboarded. Our students never missed a day of school because of COVID. Students came to a physical school on Friday. By Sunday, our children were being onboarded. Parents were on the phone and the computer, testing it out, figuring out how to log on. This was new to everybody. And Monday, bright and early, our students were in class. And just as Michelle has shared, and I am sharing, being proactive, forecasting, understanding how could you position yourself and your business to operate at its level of best for whatever season you're in. We're not comparing to other people. We're not saying, oh, this person has a multi-million business and I'm just a sole trader. No, it's about your level of best for your place of growth and your season where you are. be positioned to be the best at that level, so that whether it's an opportunity or a challenge, you are ready to handle it. But Raul, even as you think about your role as an impact strategist and the work that you do through Vision Work Solutions, tell me, what adjustments did you have to make in order to make sure you're able to survive and thrive? Because I know that you function in the places of individual impact, corporate impact, as well as small and small business impact as well. So what sort of adjustments did you have to make?
Wow, adjustments. I think everything had to be adjusted. I don't think there was an area that was not unturned, not impacted or affected in my line of business. You know, often we say that business relies on cash flow. The question I had to answer is, how do you run a business without cash flow? Because the just prior to the pandemic, I was, moving along comfortably, had a couple retainers, paying the bills, marketing, doing everything. And then, the bottom just fell out. And maybe I should have taken some of that advice about moving into tech, So it was a matter of adjusting. And I think what stood out and what I had to continue to adjust and rely on was on relationships. The value of relationships stood out for me as most important, because I had to move to a bartering system. Just about everything I had to get done, from my marketing, selling, finances, every aspect, even how I got business, I had to rely on my connections with individuals, the business that we do, and we traded. Quite a lot of what I did, I had to trade. So if I wanted a particular service, I gave something in return, because there was no cash, there was no cash flow. So I think that was one of the major adjustments. Like everyone else, I had to adjust to this new tech world, and that was a big one for me. I remember one night, I don't have any hair on my head right now, but one night pulling my hair out because I was trying to do a post on Facebook, and this thing was taking me forever to get the right imagery and get everything right. So just an example of some of the adjustments I've had to make, and I think I've come a long way, in terms of being able to be prepared for online marketing, digital marketing. All those are some of the adjustments that we have to make. Even deeper than that, our very systems. How do we pay? How do we receive payments? All those things had to move online. So these were all the adjustments that had to be made. You had to make sure all your online banking was up to date and everything was running smooth with that. If you had your accounting systems, how was that running? Your record keeping systems, all those things had to be adjusted, in order to relate and prepare. Certainly, a big part of the adjustment had to do with your very offerings. Some of the things that I offered, our company offered, just prior to the pandemic, weren't as relevant. So you had to really dig deep in assessing, at least we had to dig deep in assessing the needs, the current needs, and adjust our offerings to match where the needs were. So you would see that reflected in our financial Fridays, because everybody was concerned about making more money, and the coaches that we have on board, because everybody wanted to connect with somebody, because they wanted to get into business and they wanted someone to help them, to hold their hand. So we had to provide some more support in those areas. So I would say just about every area was impacted, and don't even talk about the personal level. So much was impacted in terms of having to cook more. Back at our home, we did the kitchen garden thing, so we were planting and cooking, reaping, and so it was really I would say it's a major pivot. And for myself and for my company, we see this as something that is going to be permanent. This isn't just a momentary adjustment until things go back to normal. This is it. This is the new reality, and this is what we are adjusting to. So those are some of the areas, Alina.
And
Yeah,
Alina,
definitely.
if I may just jump in, just stick
Of
two
course.
things in. Mr. Rollins mentioned, adjustments that would have had to be made. And what worked, he said bartering system. It's so funny because, we have always pushed the little mantra of rest and relaxation. That's what we offered. And I found that in 2020, we were actually able to make good on that because people were so tired of being, at home and just being boxed in, that they really were trying to find a place to get away to, and we were able to provide that space for them. But what it meant is learning each client, right? And so we talked about sales and trust, you know, but in the whole process of communication, there's also listening to the client, you see, which has a lot to do with this whole issue that we're discussing. Because when you listen to your client, you know what to put on and what to take off in terms of your appearance. You understand? So we were able to make adjustments based on the needs of the different clients, things that they said they wanted. So I realized that families were coming, small families, mother, father, two kids, and the kids, the demographics in terms of the age of the kids and that kind of thing. So we were able to put manipulatives and toys and books and so on that the kids could use and they could play, right? And then we realized, okay, we had more couples coming, so we were able to outfit the rooms with things that would be more in keeping with couples and they're spending quality time together. So we were listening, and because of that, we found that we were able to capitalize more, you understand, in terms of providing that quality for our guests. And there was also looking at the different variation in the ethnicities and the cultural differences, the social differences, because people were coming in from different walks of life, and each group came with a different need, a different expectation, you see, and you had to be on the ball learning these things. And as we interviewed the clients, we were able to make the necessary preparations for them. Sometimes it meant just picking two or three wildflowers, in the garden and sticking them into a vase, and people were so excited about that, depending on what they wanted. So yes, appearance does, it really does matter, right? Especially in business, um, as of course in our private lives, but that, as one politician said, that's a discussion maybe for another for another time, you know.
Yeah, I just want to highlight a comment that came in, and it says, I had to adapt my in-person workplace to be just as engaging virtually. Using the breakout
Workshops.
room feature in
Workshop.
Zoom helped me to maintain and yes, thank you. In-person workshops to be just as engaging virtually. Using the breakout room in Zoom helped me to maintain an engaging experience for participants. Yes, and for many of us, that was a big adjustment too, shifting all our in-person to online, just like we're now. Hey, COVID has caused us to have book club conversations online now. So yeah, definitely figuring out how we could stay engaged and connect with our clients, super important. But I want to open the floor. Roll, what light bulb moment did you have while you were reading the chapter that you used to continue our discussion this evening?
I don't know if I would call it a light bulb moment, but it certainly emphasized the value of this issue that we're talking about, how important it is in so many aspects of our life. And in one of the discussions, I was in a discussion earlier about the concept of discrimination. And when we hear the word discrimination, we think about it in a negative context. But you have to be discriminatory. Did I say that right? Was that right, Michelle? When as we, and this discussion had to do with children, and as a parent, in terms of the guidance that you would give them in terms of how they manage their own appearance. I remember being in a bank once, and two guys walked into the bank with hoodies. You understand? You couldn't see them at all. They had these big backpacks on. The entire bank gaze shifted. Everybody looked at these guys through when they came in, follow them to the person they came to, and follow them the way out. Because of course everybody was concerned. You understand? I remember going to an ATM once, and this vehicle pulled up, making low, with the low wheels, low rim, and making a lot of noise. And these guys come out with the wife beater, and I was just about to go into the ATM, and I froze for a minute. you know Now, what am I getting at? What I'm saying is that we were discussing about your children and how we encourage them to manage their own appearance, and understand that these things are important even as they go into the marketplace, as they try to build careers, they try to build credibility as young professionals. It's something to keep in mind and something to be very careful about. I remember a discussion about rappers and people in the hip hop area. And you would see these hip hop people, they dress any way they were, it's a free thing, But interestingly, when you see these rappers, these hip hop people begin to make more money and become, more businessman like, you could see that change taking place. So we cannot ignore this whole issue of appearance at all. As much of as we would want to minimize it, it's very critical. And as parents, we really want to encourage our children to keep it in mind. I know we're living in an age where it's however I please, and whatever. If it feels good, do it. But I think we have to acknowledge how these things impact upon our credibility, even for our children as well. So that kind of jumped out at me, as a parent.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Michelle, what about you? What light bulb moments that you would have had during the reading chapter 13 that you would share with others?
I think the issue of packaging. I just love the use of the term, and I can see the relevance to um, my own life, my professional life, particularly, right? We're constantly selling, right? And how we package based on the research that we would have done directly or indirectly, understanding our clients, understanding what they're looking for, what it is that they need, right? And meeting that need based on their cultural differences, based on their ethnic differences, their socioeconomic background, and so on, and finding a middle ground and being consistent in the packaging. That's important. I've done a lot of courses on branding, and and that uniformity of voice. Let's talk about uniformity of color, the consistency of your content, and so on. That stood out because when you, based on who you're interacting with, right, and what you hope to achieve through that interaction and what you're selling. Obviously, I'm not selling anything that could be put on a virtual store, right, online. I'm selling, obviously, I'm selling rest and
Yeah,
relaxation, where
experience.
people
Yeah.
have to, I'm selling an experience. People have to come to me to get that, right? And I have to guarantee that when they come, right, all of protocols that have been mandated by the various ministries and organizations are in fact in place. You see, so it's very important that that packaging is in place, and it's truthful, because people's word is what will guarantee that. So making adjustments continually based on customer client need, right? Based on the protocols and those kinds of things, that is important for the business that I'm in, right? But it also stood out because packaging is important. Um, I think also I had a little note on cultural diversity, and I put an asterisk by cultural diversity because, you know, I have, for example, we had some Spanish, Latin guests, and when they came, they were surprised that I had actually what they can use to make arepas, right? Um, and then, of course, you have your towers, and you have your pots and your different things. So even in that, I know it's a little funny, and it's probably off the discussion. But even in providing those things, you're showing that you understand your clients, their needs, the things that they like. Um, so That stood out for me. So making the necessary adjustments continually, looking at your package.
Yes, I
And
really
Yeah,
appreciate you taking time to share that. Yes, Roll.
yeah, there was something that Michelle mentioned earlier, and it was about authenticity.
yes,
And it may seem to sometimes contradict with the issue of branding in some way sometimes, because sometimes it's about what is in the best interest of your customers and the general market you're going after. But this issue of authenticity is even more so, really, really important, because you want to make sure that in that branding that there's a match, that what you project and who you are matches up, because people are going to sense that, hey, this is a fraud, you're just acting a part, but this is not really you. So that's why, for example, Trevor Sayers, for example, that works for him, you understand, and it works for his clientele. He is not putting on, you understand, he is true to himself. And if you're not a Trevor Sayers, don't try to be a Trevor Sayers. If you're clean cut and your shirt, you have your shirt well organized and ironed, that's you, be you. You understand? While we're acknowledging the need to cater to our clients and all that, there's also the importance of being you and being true to thine own self, be true, in other words. And that is just as important in this day and age.
Yeah, I really think as well, Roel, you mentioned that once as professionals and entrepreneurs, we become very clear about who we are and the brand that we're building, it can also increase our ability to be able to cater, whether it's culturally diverse groups or different offering different types of services, that kind of thing, because you start off with a foundation that establishes who you are, what you represent, what you do. Because as you're saying that, my mind went back to SRC Private. At its core, SRC Private provides private primary schooling that is able to offer whole brain learning strategies using differentiated instruction, as being able to cater to the learning needs of each individual student. At its core, that's what it is. But because we are very clear on what SRC does, it then makes it easy to then apply the services to the needs literally of each client, which in this case is the student. So you find that the principles then are then tailored to the needs of each student, not because we're doing a million and one different things, but because at the core it is who we are and it is what
Yes,
we do, how we
yes,
do. It
yes,
doesn't take
yes.
extra effort. Every student has a learning plan. Every student has
Hmm.
information submitted about their learning progress and how well they're able to demonstrate knowledge, interpretation, and application of curriculum concepts. It's not extra, it's not fake, it's not we ain't doing you a favor. It is who we are as an institution. So, in the same way, because for example I'm listening to Michelle, she has a very specific focus on the type of experience she wants to create for her clients through Matties, and the same thing applies. It makes it easy to bring in the arepa maker because that's part of who Matties is. It's just part of the
Hmm.
offering. Or it makes it easy for Vision Works to say, we're here to stand with you and help you figure out your finances, not because you're trying a thing with the finances, but it's part of making impact. So it flows naturally. So I agree, and I just kind of wanted to stick that in a little bit. That when we become clear about our brand, about who we are institutionally, and we live in that authenticity, it's easy to then give that differentiated adjustment for the different demographic groups. Yes,
Yes,
Roll?
yes. Yeah, I was just going to add, you see, we can't escape this whole idea of core values. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
we have to live out these core values. And if you're trying to appear a certain way, you're trying to brand a certain way, you're trying to market a certain way, and it doesn't connect with your core values, you can't live it out. You're not going to be consistent, and you're not
That's
going to
right.
meet the need. You understand? You're going to be doing a lot of things because you believe that's what people want, but you yourself and your organization is going to suffer for it. So it kind of makes sense, as we're having this discussion about appearance, which seems to start on the outside, that we start on the inside by establishing what's
Yes.
important for us. What are our core values? What are the
Yes.
things that we hold to as true and that we're not going to deviate from? And then build our the appearance package or marketing package, branding package around that.
Yeah, I agree, and I would, if I
That's
may, just
right.
stick in for a quick second. Um,
Of course.
I remember TD Jakes talked about exposure, right? Limited exposure would result in limited, you know, choices because you don't know much. So clearly, you don't have, that worldview. And when I had the idea of Mattie's Inn, really what I started doing was looking at my experience in each and every bed and breakfast, foreign bed and breakfast that I'd been to, every inn, every hotel, looking online at reviews, what people desired, and then shaping a model, right, around which the core, which is to create rest and relaxation, a product that somebody or an experience that people had never had before. And as the first time somebody said to me, this is a cross between Hilton and Hyatt, right? And I just smiled because I said, "This is," he said, "but it's so homely. This is the thing." He says it's personalized and homely, and I think that was the inspiration that I needed to go forward, right? So that while it is necessary to make adjustments, we have to have exposure, you understand, and then decide from the wealth of experiences, what is it that we want to narrow in, on, zero in on something, make that your core value, and then from there you express, right?
Yes,
And of
yes,
course you keep adjusting and adapting based on how you want to meet client needs, but you're not really moving far from who you are and your
yes.
center of authenticity, you see. So yeah, I can relate to what you both have said.
Yeah, it's actually one of the things that I was
Yeah.
actually looking for in the chapter, Alina. I have to say I was a little disappointed because when I saw the title of the chapter, I was really looking for more on the issue of the adjustments, and he kind of
Yes.
focused more on the appearance. Maybe later on he may treated it
Yes.
because this whole idea of being able to make adjustment, and if we look at the time that we're in, you rightfully call that one in terms of the question you asked about the adjustments we had to make. But it's one of the issues about
Yes.
adjustments is that you constantly tweaking. You're not going to arrive at a place where yes, it's finished and this is it. You have to constantly, because the environment is changing, demand is changing, needs are changing. It's constantly in this state of flux, so that you have to be prepared to be making these adjustments. And I always remember the story about if you're going to go to the moon, you understand, they actually start going in a trajectory that's a little off course, and you have to make these minor adjustments all the time until you arrive. So it's
Yes.
something that you really have to build into your plan and being. In fact, there's a question about in times like these, is it more important to be strong or flexible? So there's the example of you have a hurricane blowing and you're a big tree. What happens is that you do like that and you break. But if you're a coconut tree, you bend all the way to the ground and then you come back. So this whole idea of building flexibility, being able to adjust, being able to move, if demand goes down, you adjust to something else, is a very important principle as individuals and as businesses to adopt.
And as you say that role, I, just sharing my thoughts on it as you ask, which one is it? Is that you're going to be strong, or you're going to be flexible? And as you said that, I just thought the goal is to be both. But the challenge is to figure out what are the areas that we're going to hold strong and what are the areas we're going to be flexible. Because when we think about the coconut tree bending in the storm, everything that tree is not bending, the roots not going anywhere. The roots actually are holding firm in the ground, while the tree itself is what is bending. And it's the same thing with who we are as individuals. It's the same thing with our entrepreneurial identity, our business identity, that I think that we have to be strong in terms of our values. We have to be strong in the
Yes,
core of what
yes, yes.
we're called to do. Like when I think about SRC, we're here to encourage excellence, and we're here to tailor academic support for the needs of each child. And over the years, I could think as far back as 2007, when I first really started getting my grips into education, and now that has presented itself in so many different ways, from having the teachers go to the homes of the student, to having a building where we brought the students to us, to now in a pandemic having all our classes online. Its representation has changed. That's the flexible part, but at the core, the root of it all is the values that we hold and the impact we're working towards having. And so as you say that, that's my closing thought to share, that we can be strong and flexible at the same time. Michelle, what closing thoughts would you like to share as we wind down on chapter 13?
I think that I would say to everyone, be authentic and have your core values, have your principles, and shape everything else from there. The Bible says, whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might, right? So obviously your hands will find the things that it is going to do based on the things that you've been called to do and the things that you like, the things that you love. So yeah, I that would be, and don't worry about everything else and everyone else. Once you're authentic, once you're true to yourself, and you're doing it um, for the benefit of society, I think people will recognize and they will be drawn to you. You see?
Yeah. And Raul, what are your closing thoughts?
I would just like to re-emphasize the value of the non-verbals in managing our parents. The non-verbals are important. Everything that we do, we are communicating. Even when we're not speaking, we are communicating. We are communicating all the time. Communication does not stop. You understand? It's always taking place. How we have our space, how we organize our environment. You understand? The things that we do and don't do. We have to spend some time. And I would encourage individuals to almost make like a list. Do a kind of checklist and look at the different ways that we communicate without using words. And ask ourselves, are these methods of communication communicating what we want to communicate, whether personally, all right, or professionally, or in our business, all right? Are all the other things communicating? So you're a business person and you're not available to your staff. You understand? Every time somebody or some family member is trying to call you and you're never available. Okay, I'll call you back. What are you communicating? All right. So I would just like to encourage persons to make some kind of assessment. Look at ourselves, look at our non-verbals and all the ways we'll be communicating in that way, and see if they line up with the core values and the branding and the image that we want to project, and continue to build and adjust incrementally.
Yeah, thank you guys so much as always for joining me here in studio. Thank you, Achievers, for joining us live, and even those who watch the replay. You're an achiever too. Thank you for joining. Have a great night, everybody, and until the next time, keep reading, keep building, keep encouraging yourself, and remember, we are the Uncommon Achievers. Have a good night, everyone.